The rain fell relentlessly, tapping on the windows of the old Victorian mansion as if trying to claw its way inside. Amelia shivered, alone in the cavernous house that seemed to echo with secrets. She had inherited the place from a distant relative, a relative she never knew existed until the lawyer's letter arrived. As the rain intensified, so did the eerie whispers that danced through the corridors like ghostly apparitions. Amelia roamed the dimly lit rooms, each step accompanied by the creaking floorboards that added to the unsettling symphony of the house. The antique furniture, draped in dusty sheets, seemed to watch her with disdain. The portraits on the walls followed her every move with eyes that held a silent accusation. It was as if the very essence of the house resented her intrusion. As the storm raged outside, the electricity flickered and died, leaving Amelia in the oppressive darkness. Her only source of light was a feeble candle she found in a forgotten drawer. Shadows danced on the walls, distorting the faces in the ancestral portraits into grotesque masks of despair. Unease settled in the pit of her stomach, and she questioned the wisdom of spending the night in this place. But the storm outside showed no signs of mercy, and the roads had become treacherous rivers of runoff. Determined to weather the night, Amelia huddled in the living room, the feeble flame of the candle casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and contort. The walls whispered ancient secrets, tales of tragedy and despair, as if the very bricks held memories. The clock in the hallway chimed midnight, its sound resonating through the empty house like a mournful dirge. That's when she heard it, a distant sound, a faint melody that seemed to float through the air. It was the haunting strains of a piano, a melancholic tune that clawed at her sanity. Amelia followed the ghostly melody, her steps echoing through the corridors. The source led her to a forgotten room at the far end of the mansion, a room that felt colder and more foreboding than the rest. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a dilapidated music room with a grand piano at its center. The room seemed frozen in time, as if the music had ceased decades ago. But the melody persisted, emanating from the untouched keys of the grand piano. Amelia approached it cautiously, her fingers hesitating above the ivory. As if possessed, she began to play, the haunting notes resonating in the desolate room. The melody took on a life of its own, filling the air with a spectral presence. Unseen hands seemed to guide hers across the keys, and the shadows in the room danced to the eerie tune. The rain outside intensified, joining the haunting melody with its relentless percussion on the windows. The walls seemed to close in on her, and the portraits on the walls contorted into grotesque expressions of anguish. A presence, ancient and malevolent, hung in the air, whispering forgotten sorrows. Amelia tried to stop playing, but her hands moved of their own accord. The piano seemed to feed on her emotions, drawing out the darkest corners of her soul. The room pulsated with an otherworldly energy, and the walls groaned as if in pain. As the last notes of the haunting melody echoed through the mansion, the rain outside ceased, and an unsettling silence enveloped the house. The electricity flickered back to life, revealing the music room in its dilapidated reality. The grand piano stood silent, a relic of the past. Trembling, Amelia stumbled out of the room, the weight of the house pressing down on her. The storm had passed, leaving the mansion in an eerie calm. But Amelia knew that the echoes of the haunted melody would linger, a haunting reminder that some houses harbor secrets that can only be heard in the silence of the night. The brochure promised an idyllic vacation, a charming apartment in the heart of an old European city. As Emma and Mark arrived at their destination, the cobblestone streets and historic buildings seemed to welcome them. Little did they know, the quaint apartment they had rented held a dark secret that would unravel their sanity. The apartment, nestled in a centuries-old building, exuded an unsettling stillness. The air felt heavy, and shadows clung to the corners like malevolent specters. Unease settled over Emma as they stepped inside, the atmosphere thickening with every passing moment. The furniture was quaint and antique, but the allure of history soon gave way to a disconcerting energy that permeated the space. Emma dismissed the shivers crawling down her spine, attributing them to the building's age. Mark, too, tried to reassure her, blaming their unease on exhaustion from their journey. As night fell, the apartment revealed its true nature. Whispers echoed through the dimly lit rooms, indistinct voices murmuring secrets that sent shivers down Emma's spine. Mark, usually the voice of reason, began to question the reality of their surroundings. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his eyes darting around the room. Emma nodded, the realization sinking in that they were not alone. The walls seemed to breathe, and shadows slithered along the edges of their perception. Desperate for answers, they delved into the history of the building. The apartment's past emerged like a ghostly narrative, a tale of tragic events that unfolded within its walls. It had been witness to unspeakable horrors, a silent witness to the anguish of those who had lived and died there. Emma and Mark were now unwitting players in a haunting drama, unable to escape the apartment's grasp. As the nights wore on, sleep became a distant memory. Strange dreams invaded their minds, vivid nightmares that blurred the line between reality and illusion. Emma awoke to the sound of distant sobbing, her heart pounding in sync with the haunting cries that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of the building. Mark's once jovial demeanor crumbled, replaced by a haunted expression. He claimed to see figures in the shadows, apparitions that vanished when confronted. Emma, too, felt the weight of unseen eyes following her every move. Their vacation turned into a nightmare as the apartment played tricks on their senses. Objects moved of their own accord, and the air crackled with an unsettling energy. Whispers escalated into tormented wails, and the walls seemed to bleed memories of long-forgotten sorrows. Emma, driven by a need to unravel the truth, discovered a hidden compartment in an antique wardrobe. Inside, she found a dusty journal, its pages filled with the anguished confessions of previous tenants. The apartment had claimed them, one by one, as it fed on their fears and darkest secrets. The more Emma read, the clearer the malevolent force became. The apartment reveled in psychological torment, manifesting the deepest fears of those who dared to stay within its confines. Mark's sanity teetered on the edge as he became convinced that the apartment was alive, a sentient entity that thrived on the suffering of its inhabitants. Desperation set in as Emma and Mark tried to leave, only to find themselves trapped within the apartment's walls. The exit seemed to shift, doorways leading to endless corridors that twisted and turned like a malevolent maze. Time lost meaning as they struggled against an unseen force that sought to claim them. In the suffocating darkness, Emma and Mark clung to each other, their grip on reality slipping away. The haunting whispers escalated into guttural growls, and the apartment seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, the apartment released its grip. Emma and Mark stumbled into the pale light, their faces etched with the horror they had endured. The once charming facade of the building now stood as a silent sentinel to the torment within. They left the haunted apartment, its secrets locked away like ghosts in the attic of their memories. The brochure's promise of a relaxing vacation had become a nightmarish journey into the depths of psychological terror, a reminder that some places carry the weight of their history, and not all vacations end with souvenirs and fond memories. The isolated cottage nestled in the woods stood as a refuge for Emily and Jack. Eager for a quiet retreat, they escaped the hustle of city life, seeking solace in the serenity of the countryside. Little did they know, their haven would become a haven for something far more sinister. The first knock came on the door, faint but unmistakable. Emily and Jack exchanged puzzled glances. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the dense forest surrounded them in an impenetrable embrace. Jack dismissed it as a trick of the wind, but Emily's unease lingered. That night, as the couple settled by the crackling fireplace, the knocks returned, louder and more insistent. Emily's eyes darted toward the door, and Jack's reassuring smile failed to quell her rising anxiety. They approached cautiously, the rhythmic pounding resonating through the small cottage. "Hello?" Jack called out, his voice swallowed by the eerie silence that followed. Emily clutched his arm, her gaze fixed on the door. A whisper of a breeze stirred the air, carrying with it an otherworldly chill. The knocks persisted, each more forceful than the last. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Against her better judgment, she twisted it open to reveal the inky darkness outside. The forest stood still, shadows playing tricks on her senses. No one was there. Jack laughed off her apprehension, attributing the strange occurrence to the isolation of their surroundings. Yet, as they returned to their cozy refuge, the knocks continued, a relentless cadence that echoed in the recesses of their minds. Days turned into nights, and the haunting knocks became a constant companion. Sleep eluded them as the rhythmic pounding seeped into their dreams. Emily's once bright eyes dulled with fear, and Jack's laughter grew hollow. Desperation set in, and they ventured into the forest, seeking the source of the spectral knocking. The trees loomed overhead, their branches whispering ancient secrets. Shadows danced along the path, leading them deeper into the heart of the woods. As they stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, the knocks ceased. The air grew thick with a suffocating tension. The couple exchanged wary glances, the silence a harbinger of something ominous. They stepped inside the decaying structure, its walls adorned with faded wallpaper peeling away like the layers of a sinister revelation. In the center of the dilapidated cabin, a weathered journal lay open. Its pages chronicled the experiences of a previous occupant, detailing the relentless knocks that plagued their sanity. The words spoke of an entity, an unseen force that sought entry into their world, its knocks a desperate plea for release. Fear gripped Emily and Jack as they realized the haunting had transcended time, and they were now ensnared in a cycle of torment. The knocks resumed, resonating within the confines of the cabin like a ghostly requiem. Back in their cottage, the knocks intensified, pounding against the door with a malevolent urgency. Emily and Jack barricaded themselves in, the walls closing in as the spectral force outside sought to breach the threshold. Hours turned into days, and the couple teetered on the edge of madness. The incessant knocking reverberated through their minds, an unrelenting echo that threatened to shatter their sanity. Shadows clawed at the windows, and whispers slithered through the cracks in the walls. In a desperate bid for escape, Emily flung the door open. The forest stood eerily still, the knocks silenced. But the tranquility was a deceptive illusion. A figure emerged from the shadows, a spectral silhouette with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the very essence of the night. As the figure approached, the air grew colder, and the cottage's walls groaned with an otherworldly lament. Emily and Jack, paralyzed by terror, watched as the entity passed through them, leaving a trail of numbing coldness in its wake. The knocks faded, and the forest reclaimed its unnatural stillness. Emily and Jack were left with the chilling realization that the entity, having found its release, had passed through them like a whisper in the wind. The cottage, once a sanctuary, now echoed with the haunting memory of the strange people who knocked on the door, leaving behind a psychological imprint that would linger long after the last echoes of the spectral knocks faded into the night.